Hi, my name's Jess. This is my channel Chilling Like a Villain, and this is my October wrap up. First of all, I want to say I'm really grateful for everyone that commented on my newbie video a few days ago. I've only got a few subscribers, but that is great because, as I mentioned, I was worried that no one would see it, but people have, and people have been commenting and saying welcome, and I'm really grateful and I'm really excited. I read 7 books in October, and that also meant that I completed my Goodreads challenge to read 100 books. So, the first book that I read this month is Like This Forever. Can you see that? Yeah. This is by Sharon Bolton. This is actually the 3rd book in the Lacey Flint mystery series. The Lacey Flint series is mystery. She's a detective in London. The reason this series is so different from normal mystery series is that Lacey, as the main character, is very dark and has a lot of secrets. And I know that you often get that with male protagonists, but it's rare to see a female protagonist that has a lot of darkness in them the way that she does. Obviously, I'm not going to get too far into it because it is the 3rd book in a series, but what I will say is generally for these books there are a lot of trigger warnings for kind of pretty much everything. So if there's a lot of stuff that bothers you, I wouldn't read it, because part of what makes Lacey so dark is kind of like dodgy things that have happened to her in the past. So just be aware. Trigger warnings for all the books from the very first page of the first book. I really liked this installment. The first one is probably still my favourite, but this one was very good. I've liked all the books so far. The first one is from Lacey's point of view, the second one has 2 point of views, and this 3rd one has 3 point of views, so that was a bit different. It follows Lacey as she's trying to deal with some of the events that happened in the 2nd book, and she meets her next door neighbour, who is a young boy, and he is somehow involved in murders that are happening around the area. Solid 3.5 stars. I can't wait to see what happens in the next book. The next book I read is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This follows a man who goes back to his childhood home and starts remembering some of the magical and fantastical things that happened to him there. It's not my favourite Neil Gaiman book I've ever read, but it is very atmospheric, like all of his books, and it's quite like creepy at some points, quite creepy and quite strange. What I really liked about this book is its comments on childhood, because obviously the guy that goes back is remembering things that happened to him as a child, and it's kind of examining how we remember stuff differently. We remember things that couldn't really have happened, and I really liked that because I think we've all got that. And it made me really nostalgic for my childhood. There's a really lovely quote in this book where his friend that lives on this magical farm sort of says, no one is really an adult. We all look like on the inside, we all look like we did when we were children, and it sounds better when you're reading it, but it was like a really on point comment about how most of us feel about adulthood, especially how I feel about adulthood right now. So that was like really unexpected and really nice about this book. So 3 stars. Like I said, not my favourite I've ever read, but still worth reading. The 3rd book I read is Faithful Place by Tana French. This is the 3rd book in the Dublin Murder Squad series, and it follows Frank Mackey, who we met in the 2nd book, because each of these books follows a different detective, and often we will meet the detective in the book previous to the one that they are the main character in. So they're all sort of companion books, but I actually do recommend reading them in order, just so you get a feel for the series. This series is one of my favourite series. It is a mystery series, but it doesn't feel like a mystery series. It doesn't feel like your average crime book. It's so atmospheric, and it just feels like you're reading a normal fiction book with like bits of crime sprinkled in there, because there's so many layers to them. But it's not just the like cut and dry crime book. This book follows Frank as he goes back to his childhood home that he hasn't been to for 20 years, because they discover a suitcase, and this suitcase belongs to Rosie. Now, Rosie and Frank, 20 years ago, were going to run away together, but it didn't work out. And now they've found her suitcase and they've realised that something has happened, and it brings him home back to a family that he has not talked to for years. What I love about these books is that the prose is so beautiful, and you really get that they're such character-driven books like you wouldn't believe. You really get really deep into these people's personalities, and Frank, it was really good to read from his point of view, because in the previous book he kind of seems just a bit like a joker, but in this one it turns out he's kind of messed up and he's quite dark, and there were moments where I was reading it where he gets like quite violent, and you just think, what? Who is this person? Because you kind of realise that a lot of his persona is a facade, and it's been built out of what happened to him in the past, because he's never let go of his past. And you explore all of this stuff so deeply. It's a really interesting journey, because you feel like you are there every page with these characters. I think I gave this book 3.5 stars because I did guess the murderer within one page of meeting the murderer. It's my favourite explanation so far out of all of the books, because it's the one that I like sort of felt the most. So, but it's still good. Even though I guessed it, it's still great, and I highly recommend this series. This is genuinely one of my favourite series ever, and I still have 2 books, and she's writing the 6th book now, so that's exciting. I highly recommend this series. You should get on it. The next book I read is The Dark Heroine by Abigail Gibbs. Now, this book was written by Abigail Gibbs when she was 15 on Wattpad. It's a Wattpad book, and it shows. This book, oh my god, it was awful. The only reason I finished it is because it was almost so bad that it was good. Well, no, that's not true. It was just so trashy, and I wanted to know what happened, but also my dad bought it for me, so I thought that I should at least finish the first one. Sorry. Good lord, this book is bad. It follows Violet, who is kidnapped by vampires after seeing them slay a bunch of people, and she's just kept with the vampires, and then it turns out she has this destiny to fulfill. It's really stupid, and it's not good, and I do not recommend it at all. I'm unhauling it straight away. I think I gave it like 2 stars, and that's being generous. Very stupid main heroine, abusive love interest. Oh yeah, and there's not really any plot to speak of. The plot kind of comes in later on, but no. The less said about this book, the better. Please, just do not put yourself through it. It's really bad. Now, I'm going to get a lot of hate for my thoughts on the next one, but I don't care. Like, you're going to hear about this in the Unpopular Opinions book tag, because it is Throne of Glass, the first Throne of Glass book by Sarah J. Maas, and I didn't like it. I think it's overhyped. So, if this is your favourite series, just skip ahead. Skip ahead, because this isn't going to be good. I thought Selena was inconsistent and kind of bratty, and they kept saying she's the greatest assassin in the world, but we never actually saw her doing anything that proved this. They just kept saying it, and also they kept referring to her as the assassin, and it really annoyed me. Boring love interests, not interested in that at all. I liked Nehemia. She was great. That's kind of about the only thing I did like. Maybe I had my hopes set too high. I don't know. And it didn't help that I got spoiled for like the rest of the books, so this one felt a bit pointless to me. I think I give it 3 stars because the writing wasn't that bad. It reminded me a lot of Graceling, which is a good book. So if you didn't like Throne of Glass but you kind of think that you would like something in that genre, I would read Graceling instead. The next book I read, I do not have a physical edition of because I read it on ebook, is The Anatomist's Wife by Anna Lee Huber. This book follows Kira Darby in the Victorian era, I believe. She's really shut off from society. She's living with her sister in the Scottish Highlands because before her husband died, he forced her to help him with his dissections of humans, as he is an anatomist, as the title suggests. Kira doesn't want anything to do with dead bodies or anything like that until a dead body appears in her sister's maze, and she has to help the private investigator that is at their house to solve the crime. This book was just really fun. I read it quite quickly. It's sort of typical for the genre. It really reminded me of the Julia Gray mysteries, which is very similar. A widow in the Victorian era has to help a private investigator. But what I really loved about this book is that Kira is quite different because she is really quite shy and she really wants to help with the murder because, one, they all think that it's her, and two, she does kind of have an interest in anatomy. So it makes a slightly different reading. The romance between her and Gage, which is a private investigator, was really cute. I think I gave it 3 stars, solid 3 stars. I really want to read the next books in the series. The last book I read in October was a surprise edition. I just thought I would read it really quickly. Again, I don't have a physical copy because I listened to it on audiobook, and that is Daughter of Deep Silence by Carrie Ryan. Now, I loved this book. I gave it 4 stars, and I did not expect to like it as much as I did. It follows Frances. She has been adrift in a lifeboat for 7 days, and when she's rescued, she reveals that gunmen had taken over the cruise ship that she's on. But the rest of the world, for some reason, don't know this. And 4 years later, she comes back to reveal the truth and possibly get her revenge. I'm going to do a book talk on this, hopefully really soon, because I really liked it, so I won't go too much into it, but it's just a really cool revenge story. It felt like a movie when you're reading it, and it was just really suspenseful, and I recommend it. So those are all the books I read in October. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.